Hi everyone, we are Unblocked. I'm Rodrika
I'm Sarah Louise.
and we're here today to do an interview with...
So today we're interviewing Robert, who's from Lancor Scientific. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and the project's about?
Yeah, so I work at a company called Lancor Scientific, and Lancor Scientific is an interesting blockchain project in that we have a cancer technology that we've developed over the last 15 years, and we're just bringing it to market over the last 12 months or so. And it's essentially a piece of technology that can identify any cancer in less than a minute to a very high level of accuracy for around $10 a test. So we think it's quite a disruptive technology. We think it's something that's going to be, solve a lot of the issues that we currently have of affordability and all the rest of it. But in conjunction with that, we're also building a blockchain. So whenever you do a cancer test, that cancer test is written to the blockchain, and we're building a worldwide cancer registry of all of those cancer results. And that's big because there's nothing else out there like that at the moment. So the good thing about the technology that we have is that we can find cancer before it actually develops into cancer. So as a kind of background, cancer develops in 4 stages, and the earlier that you can get the cancer, identify the cancer, the better. And we can actually identify pre-cancer before it develops into cancer. So, encouraging as many people as possible to use our technology to get those early cancer tests is our kind of end goal, our end objective. And finding cancer early is the really key thing that we're trying to do.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the technology that allows you to find the cancer without going
into too much detail? So we've got this proprietary technology, and just to give you a bit of backstory, the technology itself was developed by Professor Dura Corriger about 15 years ago at Belgrade University, and he identified that as cancer develops through different stages, the magnetic structure of the cell changes, and we can detect the change in that magnetic structure of the cell using light. And we can use visible light, standard light that you might have here, LCD light, for example. We shine that LCD light at a specific angle called the Brewster angle, which is 53 degrees, if that's interesting to anyone. And then that shines onto a sample, which is maybe a cervical sample, for example. We're starting with cervical cancer. We take a cervical smear test, we shine the light onto that cervical smear test, and in less than a minute at the moment, we can tell you whether or not you've got cancer.
So what kind of cancer detecting technology is out there now, and how does it compare to what you guys are doing here?
So that's a really good question. So at the moment, the great thing about our technology is that you can identify any cancer. We're starting with cervical cancer because it's really easy to get a cervical smear test, a cervical smear sample from a woman. And we actually can identify, it's been validated for different cancers like skin cancer and breast and so on. But the other technologies out there at the moment, and you may have been, had this type of experience, you go into your doctor's surgery, woman, they would go and have their cervical smear test, and about 3 weeks later, you get your results. The test gets bagged up and it goes off to a lab, and then about 3 weeks later, you get your results. But you've probably seen in the news recently that actually some people never get the results, and it's slow. There's anxiety involved in actually waiting for those results to appear. Have you got cancer? Have you not? But the other thing that people don't tell you is that test is only about 63% accurate. So in about 40% of cases, people may be told that they haven't got cancer when they have. The good thing about our technology is that it's over 90% accurate, and you can get your results in your doctor's surgery potentially as you're getting change from the result in less than a minute. The other thing with our technology is that we can do a test for $10. And typically a cervical cancer test might cost between £1,500 by the time you've added on the sort of processing time and all that sort of stuff. So
I know when we've talked before about this, you mentioned there being vans, so it was totally like anybody could just access these tests without having to go to the doctors. They could just pay £10. Is that something that still...
I think in terms of access for the general public, typically, what you'll hear often in the media is you'll hear about some great new cancer technology that's about to come out and about to come into the market. But what they normally don't tell you is that actually there's loads of extra stuff that they have to do to validate that technology. The interesting thing about our technology is that we've already done that, and that's why it takes a long time for stuff to be validated, because there's a process that you have to go through. Probably in the UK, the simplest way for us to move forward would be to go through private hospital networks or private clinics or pathology labs or whatever it is, and that's just because we then don't have to enter into the NHS system. And likewise with lots of markets, you have to kind of enter into the private sector first, and that gives you quick access into the market. So that's probably what we'll do to start with, and then in parallel we'll kind of do government work as well, and maybe look at doing some high impact projects in a number of different countries. So we're looking at some countries in Africa at the moment about doing sort of free cancer tests for them.
You mentioned earlier about this partnership with the Austrian government.
Yeah.
So what does that entail?
So we've done we're lucky, we're fortunate in a way that we've been able to have a partnership with the Austrian government. So the Austrian government have invested in Lancor Scientific. They believe in the technology that we're developing so much, they put their name to it, and they're helping finance our trial work, our clinical development and future trial work for the next 5 years.
Along the same vein as that, obviously there's been a lot of talk recently about people wanting to charge for their data, protect their data, and how do you, because obviously you're open sourcing, do you feel that we've become a little bit overprotective because our data isn't that valuable to us individually, right? But it can be, in cases like this, it can be so valuable when it's shared. I mean, how do you find that fine line of privacy?
We're not actually open sourcing. So the way, but we will make our data available in an anonymized way to third-party research groups. So the way that we work is we've got in effect a cryptocurrency called a Medici token, and the Medici token acts as a key to unlock the patient record, to validate that it's a real cancer device. So you want to make sure when you're having your cancer test that it's a real device, because there are certain countries that will try and counterfeit the device. So that token acts as a key to unlock the patient record, to check that it's really you doing the cancer test. It validates the machine, and then it basically enables us to write that cancer test to the blockchain. So we're creating a blockchain which enables us to do that, and then it means that if that person wants to have another cancer test in 6 months, they can access their own patient record. We know it's again then validated, and that all that information is actually stored on the blockchain in their own patient record, individualized patient record. So as I mentioned kind of earlier when we were speaking, the reason that we do that is because if you think about specific countries in the world, so the UK has a cancer registry. When you have a cancer test, it takes about 2 years for your results to go onto a cancer registry. So there's a 2-year time lag before you actually know whether or not, before you can start to see patterns from this point today.
Which is a long time.
It's a long time.
Case of,
But with our technology, it's real time. So you do the test, it's straight onto the blockchain. So as we start to roll out the technology and the devices, the cancer devices, as more tests are performed. So, for example, maybe each device might be doing, say, 10,000 cancer tests a year, and as we roll those out, then obviously we're starting to populate the blockchain in all the locations where we have those cancer devices very, very quickly. But what we're really doing is creating this worldwide registry of cancer results, and that's why it's really exciting. But there's, at the moment, African countries, for example, their cancer registry might be a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet. I saw one the other day that was a list of papers in a dusty room somewhere. So we can kind of, expedite this whole process. And the exciting thing about what we're doing is it means that we can see the future patterns. So we can start to see those patients that are most at risk. So those patients that are that we should be focusing in on. So there's going to be a certain percentage of people that are more prone to cancer than others, and we can identify those because we're doing volume. We've got a sort of artificial intelligence layer that can kind of increase the accuracy of the tests as well.
Yeah.
So as we start to see patterns, then we say, okay, we know that we only need to focus on this thin percentage of population. If we focus on them specifically with a campaign or with the machines or the testing, then we can get to 80 or 90% of the people most at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said earlier, the key thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to find cancer early. So if we can find those most at risk and we can find it early, then you can treat it. And it just means survival rates go right up.
I mean, they can even lose. I've had hospital documents lost.
Yeah.
Like when I've moved areas, moved hospitals, and I've just
That's
never
right.
found them. The records have just disappeared
paperwork,
into. Yeah, I've had it myself happen. Yeah. So I guess it'll be a lot more guaranteed that things are stored and recorded.
Absolutely, but having this centralised registry is the key thing. So you could go to a different country, but you could still access your patient record, for example. And it's that token that acts as a utility to validate that it's you and lets you run that cancer test.
Whose idea was this? Who invented this technology?
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to it earlier. There's a guy called Dura Corriga, Professor Dura Corriga at Belgrade University, and about 15 years ago he was doing research he's a nanotechnologist, and he was doing research into light and how it interacted with cells and what have you. And he identified that you could shine light and detect this magnetic change. And then that was kind of in development in a university situation for a number of years. And then there was a kind of prototype developed and what have you. And then about 5 years ago, he met my business partner and CEO, Amir. And Amir's friend had just died from cancer, and he was kind of very interested by the technology, invited him over to the UK to start developing the technology. And then over that 4 or 5 year period, the technology was actually built into a device which could then go out to do some more trial work. And it was kind of honed down to something about the size of a microscope. Was
it always envisioned to be implemented on the blockchain from the start?
Yeah, I mean, initially it wasn't, but we did a kind of a big study on the best way of creating a cancer registry, because obviously we wanted to be able to, when you had a cancer test, be able to store the results somewhere. And we kind of threw some ideas around, and then with the advent of blockchain kind of coming to the fore, I'm in a kind of digital group, and one of the guys said, you guys should be on the blockchain. We thought, okay, well, that's interesting. I don't know much about it, and this was probably about 18 months ago. And we looked at it, and the more we looked at it, we said, this is a perfect implementation of the blockchain. You've got a number of tests, they have to be stored in a secure way. You don't want to be able to delete them, so immutability. And there needs to be, the security element needs to be there. So, having the crypto handshake, having the immutability, and having, that access, were all things that we wanted to do, and that was kind of akin to the blockchain. But also having the other element, which was all around validating the device. So the way we've architected the whole process is that you can't run a cancer test, and when you log in, you can't run the cancer test unless it's being checked on the blockchain. So it acts as another validation mechanism. So all of that together kind of made it an ideal solution for blockchain technology.
What do you think your biggest challenges are going to be in the next few years?
Biggest challenges, I think we've overcome a number of big challenges. Obviously, in your early days, it's really all about finance and how can you kind of bootstrap the project to get it to the point where you can start the final validation work and what have you. We're now in in a fortunate position in that we've got the partnerships in place with the Austrian government. We've set up a company in Austria, and we've got a lab ready to go now to start the final tests in the next couple of weeks. We've just brought on a new team member who has experience in medical devices and previously worked at a big pharma. So can help us with some of the rollout and the networks and all that sort of stuff. So we're kind of just bringing on key people now that we think can help us accelerate the process. So it's kind of like the exciting bit now. So it's kind of like we've done a lot of the grind and we've kind of gone through the fundraising process and all that sort of stuff. And now we're kind of at the exciting end. We've got the technology, it's ready. Let's just go and sell it. Everyone in the team has this desire to make cancer screening available to everyone everywhere, and it's kind of the democratization of cancer screening is really the thing that it excites everyone in.
So do any of the pharmaceutical companies know about you or shown any interest?
Yeah, I mean, I get invited to link in quite often by people at pharmaceutical companies. So I'm guessing that they're probably watching what we're doing. We kind of we've been in an interesting phase in that we've sort of stayed below the radar for quite a long time, and then we started getting deals in place like the deal with the Austrian government and various other things. So then we've started relatively recently, the last couple of months, really kind of putting our heads above the parapet. We've got some articles in some of the journals, the Forbes and the Evening Standard and people like that. So people are going to know about us a little bit now, I think. And then the next phase is, we want people to give us their cancer stories so that we can kind of get those out there and find out why, what happened with people when they got cancer and what process did they go through and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to be launching something soon around encouraging people to find cancer.
Just backtracking a bit, how much does a scan cost at the moment? Like, what's the price difference? I think you mentioned £10.
Yeah, so we can we can do a cancer test for about £10. That would be the cost to whoever does the cancer test. So it's not a B2C device. So it's not, you couldn't go in and do it yourself. So you still need a medical practitioner there. So you can still need a nurse to take a cervical smear test, for example. So cost to provider is about $10 or so. So whatever they then charge on top of that. But if you're having your cervical smear test, it's about, I think the actual kit is just over £30, something like that, to the doctor. But then they have to send that away and have it processed and what have you. So the cost to the NHS might be £80 or £100 by the time they've done that thing and got the results back. But with ours, as I say, it's you press go, put the same sample in that you would do, you press go, and then you have your results at the end of it. So there's quite a big cost differential. If you think about emerging markets, they don't have access to screening because it's too expensive. Yeah. Even at £100 it'd be too expensive for them. So, we can bring that cost right down. Having, my dream is kind of having a cancer detection device, one of our devices in every doctor's surgery in the UK. So you could go and have your general checkup and say, do you want a cancer test? The great thing about our device is we're starting with cervical cancer at the moment, but in the next 12 months or so, the same machine will be able to test for 5 other cancers. So we'll be able to do cervical, breast, oral, colorectal, skin. So that's when it gets quite exciting. So one device, about the size of a microscope, it's getting smaller as well, so it's probably about that big, and it's portable as well. That's the big thing. So you could take that to rural communities, or you could, as we talked about, maybe putting it on a some type of mobile unit or whatever that might be. So that's when it gets really exciting.
Do shopping and
that's right. Maybe sitting outside a shopping centre or something. So that's when it gets really exciting. But I think the thing that's come out recently for me in the media is that actually, as you said earlier, it's not that easy for someone to get a cancer test. The perception is that it might be painful or it might be whatever, and then you've got this anxiety that happens when the waiting and is it or isn't it, and then you get you maybe get a result back that says is kind of not totally defined. So it's not positive or negative. It's something in between. So then you have to go and get another test, and that's down to the accuracy of the test and what have you. With our machine, we think we know we can get it up to a really, really high level of accuracy. It's 90% now. We know we can get it quite a bit higher. So it just means that you have your cancer test on our machine, and the results are really conclusive one way or another, and quick. So you're literally sitting there, have your test, you get your results as you're getting changed, and then the end to end it's probably no more than 5 minutes.
Have you has it been tested with real people? Yeah. And has it been tested on animals? Have you had to do that, or? No, we haven't tested it on animals. We just used it for just humans. Yeah. Just curious.
But, I think we wonder if the same tech would maybe work on horses, for example. I know, or dogs or whatever. But it's probably a similar. We haven't been focusing in on that, but there's probably a similar stage of cancer development in different animals. I don't know that for sure though, because I'm not the medical guy, but we kind of thrown the ideas around internally. But yeah, I mean, it's something definitely to look.
Do you have any figures that you can share with us about how, the survival rates of spotting cancer early and in earlier stages, and if you catch it later? Yeah.
So the thing about cancer is that if you find it early, you can generally treat it, and the earlier you find it, the more treatable it is. So cancer goes in 4 stages, so 1 to 4, and as you develop through the different stages of cancer, what happens is the cancer starts to spread to other parts of your body. So in the later stages of cancer, the cancer enters the lymph system, so it goes into your lymph nodes, it goes into other organs like the liver or your heart or whatever. When it starts spreading into those other organs, then it's very, very difficult to treat because you've got multiple tumours in multiple areas. So it's always better if you can find the cancer early, because it's normally in a single location. So if you've got early stage cervical cancer, it's in the cervix and it hasn't spread anywhere else, so you can just treat that relatively easily. Likewise with breast cancer, so if you find a lump early, then you have it removed and you can do whatever you need to, chemo or radiotherapy or whatever it is to kill it finally, and then that's job done. You'll probably be fine for the rest of your life. As it develops in later stages, then your survival rates diminish. I think there are other kind of cancer tests out there which test on blood, and the thing with testing on a blood sample is that when it gets into your bloodstream, then it's kind of too late really. So it's a question of if not when, because it's gone into your other organs, into the circulatory system and what have you. So so those blood tests are kind of fine to say yes, you've got cancer, but it's a bit pointless because you can't treat it.
It's too late.
Yeah.
What's the best way if people want to keep up with your updates? What's the best way to
so
date them? Is it a website,
we've got,
or are you more active on?
We've got a website, so if you just type into Lancor Scientific into Google, you can see lancorscientific.io. It has been really all about the kind of fundraising process. There's some interesting videos on there, or you can have a look at lancorscientific.com, which kind of is a bit more corporate, talks about the team and what have you. Join our Telegram group, join our Twitter group, which is Lancor ICO, I believe, and the Telegram group is also Lancor Scientific, I believe.
We can put some links in
there.
I'll
put some links in the thing, just in case I've got that wrong. And then we've also got a Facebook group, so join that. But we're really into starting the conversation. If anyone wants to come along, we'll be running kind of regular events in London over the next 2-3 months. So we'll let you guys know, and we'll kind of go from there.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.